Mega Man X is a weird series, from an outsider's perspective at least. It's a great series, but a weird one too. From having all sorts of ups and downs in gameplay quality, to just amazing meme-worthy scenes. You know which scenes I'm talking about. Today, I'll be giving my thoughts on the first game in the Mega Man X series, and looking at it from the perspective of someone who has played the other X games, and just other Mega Man games in general, to see how it still manages to be enjoyable to this day. By the way, because of how many reviews of this game there are, I will occasionally bring up comments by other channels if it's something that I agree with. Alright, let's get into it. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend you don't know the history behind this game, but I'll give you a quick recap anyways. Mega Man X was made as a sequel to the classic Mega Man franchise, due to Capcom wanting to change things up after making 6 NES Mega Man games in a row. And oh boy did they make the right decision, because little did they know their little attempt to keep Mega Man relevant turned into one of my favourite game series of all time. But enough pep talk, let's load up the game. Now, because I really want to get into the main gameplay and story, I'm gonna give an even quicker recap of the story that takes place before the game starts. After the adventures of the classic Mega Man cast, Dr. Light created a new robot called X, who has the special ability to think for himself without the constraints of programming, similar to how a human would. Obviously, Light realized this could become a real problem if X decided to start committing mass genocide 2 seconds after being created, so he decided to seal X away to slowly have him mature, and died shortly after. About 100 years later, a new scientist called Dr. Kane found X and uses blueprints to create a new generation of robots called Reploids, who all have the free will ability like X does. This was mostly successful until some of those Reploids started going mad and were labelled Mavericks. So to stop these Mavericks, Dr. Kane made a group of Reploids, including X, called the Maverick Hunters, to fight back against these Mavericks. Soon after, another robot called Zero woke up and started causing chaos, so the Maverick Hunter leader Sigma was sent to stop him. They fight, and eventually Sigma wins, and somehow, he turns Zero into a good guy. Then, after all that, Sigma starts going Maverick and brings some of the other Maverick Hunters to his side. So X and Zero, who is now a Maverick Hunter, are tasked to stop Sigma and his Maverick rebellion for good. And that is where the game starts. X heads out to stop the Mavericks on the highway, and the intro stage begins. Now, as the first stage you play in the entire Mega Man X series, this stage is great, allowing you to learn or relearn basic abilities from the classic series like jumping and shooting, but also teaching you the new mechanic, wall jumping, one of the many things that keeps this game fresh and exciting. First time players of the Mega Man X series will love this stage, but if you're a Mega Man X veteran like me, this stage is absolute torture. I need the dash, I need it. Spoilers for my other Mega Man X videos, I like the dash. But yeah, all jokes aside, it's a great stage. This may not be a new opinion, but it's just too true. The 2B mini-bosses are really fun, and I like how it transitions into teaching you how to wall jump. I also love the gimmick where you have to kill the enemies before they break the floor, and then later on you have to dodge the floor falling beneath you. Definitely a groundbreaking gimmick. I promise I'm not like this all the time. Eventually you make it to a long open road where you gotta fight off cars while they try to violently run you over. But if you think that's bad, get ready for Purple Boba Fett in a mech, Vile. Barely 5 seconds after stepping out of his airship, Vile starts to brutally attack you with his ride armor. And after a while you realize you basically have no chance against this guy. Some would say this is technically the easiest fight in the entire Mega Man X series because it requires pretty much no effort. But if that was the case, Mega Man X6 wouldn't exist, would it? Once you're low, Vile stuns you, grabs you, calls you a pathetic bitch, and just before he's about to kill you... What can I say about this scene that hasn't already been said? Also, Zero, where the hell are your man boobs? So, after disarming Vile, literally, X expresses remorse that he wasn't able to beat Vile, and Zero tells him it's okay, and that one day X may be as powerful as he is. Basically also calling you a pathetic bitch, but in a nicer way. Then he starts explaining how he's definitely gonna help you out and not go on vacation while you do all the work. Then leaves, and X makes his way back to Hunter Base. Also, one more thing I want to say about this scene. It's almost like the writers forgot X isn't a silent protagonist, because this line right here is the only line X has in the entire game. I just think it's weird. And now we're at the stage select. This may be a hot take, but I have mixed feelings about a stage select in general. When I first played the game, I was pretty skeptical towards the idea of just picking whatever stage you want, mainly because I was worried I would spend all my time searching for the least difficult stage. I don't expect you to agree with this take, I'm not sure I do either, but by the end of the video, I hope you will at least see where I'm coming from. Now, with all that aside, let's move on to what I'm pretty sure is the intended first stage in the game, Chill Penguin stage. For the first bit, I think there could be a bit less enemies, but maybe that's the skill issue part of my brain thinking. Now, this part right here is pretty fun for new players. You know, getting to run and jump around, dodging spiked wheel enemies from time to time. But for me and the other Mega Man X veterans, this is just one final stretch towards the capsule with a dash. And oh boy, we're finally here. Dang. I honestly can't imagine what classic Mega Man fans would be going through after seeing this. Dr. Light, one of the most important characters in the entire Mega Man franchise, reduced to nothing but a hologram in a capsule. He explains how he wishes X had been able to choose a peaceful future instead, but understands the only option right now is to fight. It's kinda sad when you think about it. But hey, at least he's still useful, and we're about to get one of the best upgrades of all time. So after all this talk about the dash, I got up and started thinking to myself, would I still be a fan of the Mega Man X series if there was no dash? Well, that ended up being a bad idea because 3 minutes later I was on the floor having an existential crisis, so I decided to never think about that again. Just before the end of this stage, we get to try the ride armor for the first time in the series. The way I see it, these massive death mechs have always just been there. And since then, me and most Mega Man fans have just accepted it. Even Capcom has gone as far as to use these things for stage gimmicks in later X games. And now we're at the boss. You can tell they intended Chill Penguin to be the first main boss in the game. No matter how many or how little upgrades you have, he's still really easy. All you gotta do is cling to the wall and you can dodge most of his attacks, giving just the right amount of challenge for new players. Eventually, Chill Penguin dies and X claims his victory for the first proper time. This stage and boss is one of the many reasons why this game can still be fun to this day. Simplicity. A lot of retro games end up being really hard for newcomers or just downright unfair. But later on I'll come back to this talking point when I fully answer the question of how this game is so timeless. Back on topic, just like the classic series, X gets special weapons from beating each of the main 8 bosses. Chill Penguin drops the weapon Shotgun Ice. It looks kinda plain in the demo, but what they don't show you is that it can break off walls and shatter into smaller pieces. And the charged version creates an ice platform you can ride on. It's an okay special weapon in my opinion. Now let's head on to Storm Eagle's stage. Okay, I think it's time I address the music. The tracks in this game are absolute fire, especially themes like Storm Eagle or Spark Mandrill. And when they're not delivering bangers, they're delivering some nice environmental tracks that still manage to be memorable. Back to the game, Storm Eagle stage focuses more on platforming and it's pretty enjoyable. But let's be real here, nobody is finding this hard tank without internet guides. The first person to ever 100% this game must have been bored as hell to find this. When it comes to this part of the stage, it's pretty fun, although I feel like they could have made this enemy a bit weaker to charge shot. Once you come down here, you can find another Dr. Light capsule. This one contains a head part, which allows you to break certain blocks above you with your head. And I'm gonna be completely honest here, you can tell the devs did not care about this upgrade. In the entire game, there are only 4 times where the head part is actually useful. And one of those times is the tutorial on how to use it. Okay, I can't really think of a transition out of this segment, so I'll just continue. Eventually, X makes it to an airship and somehow manages to destroy it by standing inside it. I'm gonna assume he used his buster. And now he has to face Storm Eagle. Storm Eagle is a pretty interesting boss, as in 2 out of his 4 attacks actually do damage, and 3 of them can be evaded with a dash, making him almost easier than Chill Penguin. And once he's dead, oh shit, X, quick, get out of there, there's no time to victory pose, the ship's gonna crash. Now what's really cool about this stage is I originally thought it would be much harder without the dash, but then I played the stage without it and it was actually pretty fun, although it was much slower, but still great. Just goes to show this game is still full of surprises. Now, we just got one of the best special weapons in the entire series, Storm Tornado. This special weapon is way better than it looks, creating a wide tornado that one-shots almost everything in its path. The charged version is amazing too, creating a tornado pillar that kills everything below or above you, a bit similar to Zero's Tenshuha attack in X8, even though Storm Tornado obviously came first. And now it's time to go after the next Maverick, Flame Mammoth. The first thing I gotta mention is how a few of these stages have a little feature where if you beat one stage before beating another, that stage will be slightly altered. For instance, if you beat Chill Penguin, Flame Mammoth's stage will be covered in ice instead of lava, making the stage easier. Although I have no idea how a Maverick dying caused a random factory to freeze over. Anyways, this stage uses factory machines as gimmicks. But because there's no lava beneath you, you can simply run under all the enemies and stuff, which is what I usually do. Alright, I was gonna make some witty joke about how this capsule is really hard to get, but I couldn't think of anything. This overall has to be the hardest upgrade in the game to get. Some would say the Hadouken is, but once you know the steps to get it, it's pretty easy. This upgrade on the other hand requires an almost pixel perfect dash jump, and if you screw it up, you have to die and reset the blocks. Luckily, for people that don't want to spend their time getting this one upgrade, you can actually get it later on in the game, which in hindsight is a good idea, giving players the option to get an upgrade earlier than they would have on their first playthrough. But I still think they could have made it a bit easier, maybe if you just put the platform closer so if you break those 2 blocks you don't have to die and redo the puzzle. Jeez, I spent all my time talking about this one hard puzzle that isn't even required to beat the game, and I haven't even talked about the Buster upgrade you get from it. Me personally, I've always loved the arm parts since I first played the game. Looking back, they may be a bit basic compared to the others, but I just think it's so cool getting to fire a giant pink beam. Although it is pretty effective against enemies, I wish it could do more damage against bosses. And we can't forget about the fact that you can also charge special weapons to commit some absolute chaos. After a crusher segment, which I definitely didn't skip, you fight some mildly annoying shield enemies, while skipping another fun segment, and we reach the boss room. I don't know if you've caught on to this already, but these stages are amazing, including the ones I'm yet to talk about. Even without certain upgrades, they're really fun to get through, and the difficulty is never unfair. This should in theory set an example for future stages in X games, and it did! Well, until X5 at least. Flame Mammoth uses conveyor belts to spice up the fight and it's a nice touch. As for his attacks, he likes to do this bounce attack that I always fail to dodge on the first time. He will also put oil on the ground which can become a deadly hazard if he hits with fire, which is another cool detail. And I think now would be a good time to point out this game also has a boss weakness order, just like in the classic series, where bosses are weaker to certain weapons you get from other bosses. I bring this up now because I currently have Flame Mammoth's weakness, Storm Tornado. And you'll see later, some bosses behave the same when hit with their weakness, and others, yeah, you'll definitely see later. After you beat Flame Mammoth, you get Fire Wave, which is a short-range special weapon and can actually be really useful, not to mention the charged attack which creates a literal fire wave. Now that I think about it, this stage has so many fun little details, like the ice I mentioned at the beginning, the fact that these enemies can straight up be crushed, Flame Mammoth can create a pillar of fire if his fire attack touches an oil blob, and if you have certain special weapons, you can actually cut off Flame Mammoth's trunk. Jeez. It's really nice seeing how many small details this little SNES game has. Don't get me wrong, there's other SNES games with little details like this, but you gotta admit this game really gives some charm to them. Alright, let's talk about some more stages. Boomer Kuwanger stage is all about climbing a tower. First you have to get through this stealth segment where robots with aimbot will shoot you if you touch the lasers. But that's not gonna stop me from getting through here without taking damage. What's nice is that it doesn't drag on even if you do the segment properly. Next you basically have to dodge these spikes coming down, which I may or may not have died to recently. What I've noticed is the special weapons can come in handy during some of these segments. For instance, Storm Tornado makes it easier to kill these shield enemies, Fire Wave helps you with the enemies you meet while climbing up the tower, and Shotgun Ice allows you to get this heart tank. But yeah, the stage is great, and now we can move on to the boss. Okay, about Boomer Kuwanger. Me personally, I think he's kinda hard, especially when you fight him as the 4th boss in the game. Or maybe that's just me because I find bosses that teleport a lot to be annoying. The only reason why I choose Boomer Kuwanger 4th is because you can get a sub-tank slightly earlier with his special weapon. And to be honest, if you haven't played the game yet and want to, just do Spark Mandrill after Flame Mammoth. I spoke more about this in my X guide video.
Meet the old man in the red! Dodge this! This'll teach you.
Okay, shut up, Boomer. At the end of the day, Boomer Kuwanger is still a pretty fun boss to fight, but I think newcomers should just stick to Spark Mandrill. Boomerang Cutter may not do that much damage, but it has some uses when it comes to item collection, and the charged version can be somewhat useful when surrounded by enemies, which is rarely the case because this game is actually designed well when it comes to enemy placement. And oh boy, look at what time it is. It's 6:23 PM. This has nothing to do with the video. I just wanted to talk about something other than boomers, and instead talk about electric monkeys. Oh look, there's one now. This stage has a few gimmicks revolving around the lights going on and off. It's a pretty fun gimmick for the player, but this is a power plant, isn't it? So I can imagine whoever works here being pissed off that the lights keep turning on and off. Now, we can't talk about Spark Mandrill stage without talking about the music. Definitely the best theme in the game. Even pretty fun to re-listen to occasionally. Also, fun fact, when you beat Storm Eagle, his airship crashes into the power plant, making the stage easier by removing the electricity bolts you'd usually have to dodge. Anyways, after being assaulted by flying light robots, you get to fight the Thunderslimer, which is mostly harmless but can trap you and hit you with lightning, assuming you haven't beaten Storm Eagle. But I can forgive him because look at that goofy ass expression. I don't care if he strikes me with lightning while I'm in sticky water. The rest of the stage is more lights on, lights off platforming, and then you're at the boss. Where do I begin with Spark Mandrill? I mean, his attacks are well designed like the other bosses, but all it takes is his weakness, Shotgun Ice, and he becomes the first ever victim of Spark Mandrill syndrome, a syndrome some bosses have that makes them way too easy when attacked by their weakness. Thankfully, Spark Mandrill syndrome only affects a few of the bosses in the game. Also, wanna hear a funny story? Back when I first played this game, I considered Spark Mandrill a pretty hard boss. I had no idea this guy was a cakewalk with Shotgun Ice, and I actually managed to beat him without it. You know what? Let's see if I still have that muscle memory. Okay, let's go. Crap! Okay, really, bro? And dash under. That definitely took only one attempt. Yeah, Electric Spark is alright. I appreciate they made it travel up and down walls. And of course, the charge shot sure is great. Anyways, Armored Armadillo stage takes place in a mine, where you get to ride on this platform, which I find extremely hilarious, due to how depending when you jump off, it can either fling you across the stage or make you fall straight into a pit. Next there's a segment where you get chased by this thing, which I'm pretty sure is intended to be skipped so you can get the sub-tank easier. If you can't tell, I'm trying to make myself feel better about skipping fun segments. Near the end of the stage, there's another segment where you ride a platform, but this time, you get to ride straight out of the mine. In my opinion, this is really cool. But by the lag, you can tell the SNES hates this part in particular. Moving on to the boss, Armored Armadillo is where bosses start getting a bit too hard if you don't have the right equipment. Luckily for me, I have Electric Spark, which makes quick work of him. But if you were to enter the boss fight without knowing that, me when I first played the game, you'd have a much harder time. I still wouldn't call it an unfair fight, but I can't say it would be easy. You can start to see why I used to be skeptical about a stage select. I will say, I remember when I first found out about weaknesses in this game. I was stuck for a while on Armored Armadillo's boss fight when I discovered you can use Electric Spark to kill him easily. I still found a way to suck at the fight because I used all my Electric Spark thinking it would stun him for longer. You know, maybe all the mixed feelings I've had about stage selects are just because I'm bad at the game. I'll hold on to that for later. My only other thoughts on the stage, for now, are that I just love the sound of picking up health drops when you already have full HP. Which you hear a lot when playing this stage due to all the bats that drop health. Rolling shield is mostly just there, but I'd be lying if I said it was useless. Damage wise, it's okay, and the charge shot creates what I like to call the inferior shield. Or at least compared to the other shield in this game. Launch Octopus's stage uses being in the ocean as its main gimmick. And if you mess around for long enough, you notice they actually made it so Fire Wave doesn't work underwater. I would go on to praise this small detail, but then I noticed... correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think exposed electricity underwater would work very well. Like, because Fire Wave doesn't work here, that confirms X is conjuring up these elements when he uses his special weapons. So what I don't get is, why bother making Fire Wave useless if they're not gonna make Electric Spark super deadly underwater? Well, at least they made some effort to add realistic details. Better enjoy them while they last. After dealing with the fish, you fight these mini-bosses which I may have overreacted about, especially regarding the second one. In reality, they're not that hard to fight. Okay, maybe the second one isn't easy. Later on, there's another cool segment where you can destroy the ship to break the floor here, which allows you to fight this mini-boss and get this heart tank. The mini-boss in question is called Utuboros. I wonder if a name similar to that will appear in another Mega Man game. Anyways, there isn't much else to say about what happens in the stage itself. And no, I will not be talking about what these fish do to you. Launch Octopus likes to throw a ton of projectiles at you, but you quickly learn they can be destroyed with the X-Buster. Although that's not all he does. Eventually, he'll create a giant whirlwind, and if he captures you in it, he'll drain your health. Wait a minute, what's with this stage and sucking and blowing you? There's the fish, the mini-boss, Launch Octopus draining your health, these whirlwinds. Yeah, you cannot convince me it's a coincidence that all the sucking and blowing gimmicks are just in one stage. Now, I was originally gonna talk about how Homing Torpedo is a neatly balanced special weapon, but I have a better question. How did I miss this? I've played through this game countless times. I made an entire meme about Homing Torpedo which I used multiple times throughout the channel's life. It wasn't until a YouTuber called Power Guy pointed out this typo when I got curious, turned on the game, and saw it with my very own eyes. I mean, this isn't the first time there's been a typo in an X game. A decent Mega Man X game. X6 doesn't count right now. I'm just surprised I didn't notice it for so long. Sting Chameleon stage has some pretty basic platforming. Although if you've beaten Launch Octopus, it spices it up by flooding part of the stage which lets you get the heart tank. One thing I want to point out is beating bosses in a certain order, that being the route I recorded for this video, allows you to get all the game's upgrades with the least amount of backtracking possible. This is something I always like to see in Mega Man games. It's just really good for pacing in general. Through here is another segment where the head part of the first armor becomes useful. It stops these falling rocks from damaging you. Speaking of the first armor, you can find the body part up here after killing this mini-boss. Although I gotta say, I feel like this mini-boss could have a bit less health. The attack patterns are alright, but it gets boring really fast because you're just dashing back and forth hitting it with a charge shot. That's just my personal nitpick though. To pass the time, I know throughout the video I've been very inconsistent when referring to mini-bosses. Sometimes I call them by their canon names, other times I just call them the mini-boss. So I'll list off their names to do them justice. There's Beeblader, Molborer, Utuboros, Deathrow Goomer, RT55J, Anglerge, Thunderslimer, and Cruisler. I probably pronounced half of those completely wrong. Anyways, after the fight, Dr. Light gives you the body part which makes you take less damage from hits. And that marks the first armor complete, technically. I will admit, the first armor is the most basic out of all the armors in the series, but it sets a firm standard for the rest to come. There isn't much else to note about Sting Chameleon stage. You get through a cave, take a ride in the ride armor, then you arrive at the boss room. Now, I just want to take a small step back for a minute and appreciate how well this game has set an example for stages in future X games. These stages are plain, not in the boring way. Instead, they have their small, dumb but fun quirks to actually make them memorable. And I will be talking about how the other X games built off of that in future videos. I'm gonna make this as clear as possible. Sting Chameleon's boss fight is the main reason why I used to be skeptical towards stage selects. And no, I'm not talking about how he goes invisible. I think that's pretty cool. I'm referring to how some of his attacks can be way too difficult to dodge. For instance, this attack here. He gets as close to you as possible and quickly hits you with his tongue. If you jump slightly too early, he'll get you. If you jump slightly too late, he'll get you. And if you time it right, he'll try to hit you again. He also has a spike rain attack, which, in my opinion, is quite hard to dodge, even with the dash. Now, I just want to remind you, please take this opinion with a grain of salt. I'm only explaining why I used to be skeptical about stage selects. I know there's gonna be at least one person who sees this and has no idea how someone found Sting Chameleon to be a hard boss, with or without his weakness. My current opinion is that he's really easy with his weakness, but without it, I do think he can be a bit tough to newcomers. Chameleon Sting's regular shot is very similar to the Spacer/Wide Beam from Metroid. If you don't know what that is, I'll show you the comparison. The charged version creates what I like to call the superior shield, making you invincible to everything you touch for a certain amount of time. Very similar to the star power-up from Mario Bros games. Once you've beaten all 8 stages, Zero returns to tell X he's finally found Sigma's fortress, and it's time to put a stop to his war against humans. Now, I must question this once again because, like, how the hell does it take you that long to find a big ass fortress like that? Now that I think about it, why does this thing even exist? Was it built for Sigma and his Mavericks? Or was this just something that was built and then stolen? Back on topic, I am not buying the fact that Zero needed all that time to find this place. Once you get back to the stage select, you get jump scared by a bald dude with a cherry on his forehead, who takes you to the fortress stages. Before we talk about the fortress stages, there's one more upgrade that's completely optional that I want to bring up. If you get all the other upgrades in the game, get up to this ledge in Armored Armadillo stage and jump off it about 4 times, the 5th time you'll find Luigi. You'll find a Dr. Light capsule where he give you a special present. Introducing the Hadouken, a Street Fighter move. If you are unaware, Capcom loves Street Fighter, so much that they didn't just put one of the moves in the game, they made it super fucking OP. I think it's great risk versus great reward. You can only use it when you have full HP, and the button combo is pretty hard to pull off. Well, this is coming from someone who doesn't play Street Fighter and finds inputs that require more than 2 buttons to be mildly infuriating. Now that we've got the most powerful weapon in the game, X is more than ready to take on the fortress stages. As you enter the fortress, you use the special weapons you've acquired to take down the enemies that stand in your way, until you walk in on Zero and Vile staring at each other with love in their eyes. Okay, I'll stop screwing around. The next few scenes are really cool, so I'll just explain what happens and give my thoughts on it after. Zero chases Vile into the next room, and as X follows them, you can hear the sound of Zero getting beaten up. X enters and finds Zero in a cage while Vile sits there in his ride armor. He gloats over his certain victory before teaching you that all the upgrades you've collected do nothing to his ride armor. Not the X-Buster, not any of the special weapons, not even the Hadouken. Just like before, he stuns you, grabs you, but this time, Zero jumps out of his cage and uses all his remaining power to destroy Vile's ride armor for good. Zero gets thrown away and Vile makes fun of Zero's attempt to help. But despite all that, X somehow breaks free and regenerates all his health. Vile is also confused but brushes it off, and the 1v1 begins properly. Vile's boss fight isn't too difficult but perfectly fits the theme of the situation. That's basically all I can say about the fight itself, although I do enjoy the detail of him stunning you to get some extra hits in. Once you beat him, X walks over to what's left of Zero, where he tells X he's taken too much damage, meaning X will have to stop Sigma on his own, and will also give the arm parts if you haven't gotten them already. Then he gives some final words of encouragement and fades to dust, leaving X to face the fortress stages alone. These are, without a doubt, some of the most impactful few scenes in the game. What I find cool is that if you take the dialogue away, they can still be mostly understandable. There is one tiny thing I personally find weird on repeat playthroughs. Zero is seen bleeding in this mugshot right here. I would call out Capcom for forgetting Zero is a robot, but I'm not allowed to complain because I'm also guilty of mischaracterizing Reploids as people with human functions, if you've been keeping up with my Junior's Bloopers videos. So if anyone's gonna call out Capcom for it, it won't be me. Alright, I'm gonna step away from this scene because I want to give my thoughts on Zero in general. When I first played this game, I thought Zero was just an asshole, and I felt very little sadness when he died. And throughout the other X games, I still had resentment towards him. Maybe this is accelerated by how he isn't always the most well-written character, and regularly gets brought back to life for convenience. And you know what's the most hilarious part about all of this? Look at me now! With all of that out of the way, the Fortress stages truly begin. The Sigma Fortress stages mix and match enemies and gimmicks from other stages, which I always think is a pretty cool way of recycling ideas. Throughout the stages, you get to refight Mavericks you've already beaten. These refights give you the ability to test out boss weaknesses and maybe one-shot them with the Hadouken if you're skilled enough. I honestly don't like the whole refighting bosses thing, but I still prefer what this game does where it scatters them around the stages like mini-bosses, instead of teleporting to their boss rooms individually. There's not much else to say about the Fortress stages, so I'm gonna talk about the bosses you face. Boss Spider is the boss of the first Fortress stage, and is definitely the hardest one besides Sigma. It uses these bars here to create a path to try and hit you. The issue is, sometimes Boss Spider will change its directions just to get you, and if you do get hit, you'll lose your chance to do damage. I would complain more about how Boss Spider is really difficult for new players, but a new player would have beaten all 8 stages by now, so they would have some level of skill. Worst case scenario, they'd drain all their sub-tanks trying to beat it. The boss of the second Fortress stage is Rangda Bangda. It's basically a massive robot face that makes its eyes and nose come to life to attack you. The level of skill required to beat this boss is more in line with what you've had to face recently. I also like the little gimmick where the walls close in and you have to wall jump to avoid the nose part. D-Rex is the boss of the third Fortress stage, and it's definitely not the easiest Fortress boss. The main gimmick of the fight is where it tries to crush you with its massive mouth. Eventually it gets fed up trying to crush you and starts firing giant electric orbs at you. A bit out of character, but okay. Despite my issues with Boss Spider, the Fortress bosses are still well designed at their core, and their gimmicks are well fleshed out. I think Capcom also agrees with me there because they used Rangda Bangda in Mega Man X5. Alright, now it's time for the final Fortress stage. It's at this point the tone shifts noticeably and you're left to climb a long shaft. The game gives you the option to refill your sub-tanks with these enemies here, but the health drops will fall and despawn if they go off screen. So Armored Armadillo stage is much better for farming health. Once you make it to the top, you're greeted by Sigma and his dog. Sigma seems impressed that X was able to get here on his own, then challenges you to fight his dog. Velgarder isn't one of the most memorable bosses, but the fight is over quickly when you learn it's weak to shotgun ice. I also want to point out I don't think Sigma really cares for his dog. When you beat it, Sigma isn't upset at all, and he starts talking about how all of this is excellent. All I'm saying is I didn't ask to fight his dog. For his second phase, Sigma finally fights you. Although there is a slight twist, Sigma likes to roleplay as other types of characters. In this game, he's a Jedi from Star Wars. When it comes to the fight, I'm pretty sure there's a pattern to be learned, but it's easier to just go up and down the same wall while spamming Electric Spark. Then, once you've beaten him, his head detaches from his body, and he does what almost every retro game final boss does, and becomes one with the wall. Whether you play the waiting game or spam attack as much as possible, Sigma's final phase is extremely hard, specifically well-designed hard. The only way to damage him is to jump on his hands, which will hit you if you stand on them for too long, and hit him with either a charge shot or rolling shield. Throughout the fight, unless you are extremely skilled, you will have to use multiple sub-tanks and make sure you're using them at the right time. After all that, he's finally dead. As he's blowing up, he tries to guilt trip X by saying they could have all been besties and ruled the world together. Yeah, okay, Sigma, no one's buying that shit. Once X escapes the fortress, we get a sort of epilogue that gives us a somber look on the whole situation. X is mourning the loss of his friend and wonders if fighting really was necessary. And this is something he will continue to question throughout the other games. But that is where the game's story ends. Well, there is one other cutscene. After the credits, Sigma appears once again to tell you you've only destroyed one of his many bodies, and he will be back very soon. Yeah, spoilers, he wasn't lying. Anyways, back to the ending. We get to see X running along the highway while the cast of characters get named and shown, a bit like an anime opening. I love how they're smiling and doing their little poses as if we aren't the ones who murdered them. Now it's time to give my final thoughts on the game. For starters, the story. The Mega Man X series isn't really known for having great, amazing, beautiful stories, but I think this game's story is really charming, and most importantly, it's simple. Which all comes back to how this game still holds up today. It's fun, simple, and balanced difficulty-wise. Yes, there are slightly challenging moments that I talked about. There's also something else I completely skipped over. Instead of using save files, there's a password screen which you either have to memorize or write down to save and load properly. This is something a lot of retro games have that can be mildly tedious compared to save files. But there's something else I didn't mention that makes all of this okay. Mega Man X doesn't just age well, it's actually easier today than it would be when it came out in 1993, due to the X Legacy Collection adding saving and Rookie Hunter mode for new players. Speaking of new players, there's also tons of tutorials and long plays online, and this wasn't intended to be a self-promo, but a while back I made a guide for this game, so yeah. Despite my constant praising, I still feel like I've given this game a bit too much slack, because in all honesty, Mega Man X is an amazing game, especially for its time, and it still allows other games to build off of its ideas. I could ramble on and on about how great this game is, but I think you get the point. Mega Man X still holds up in 2026 because it's simple, fun, and accessible. And if you haven't played this game, sorry for spoiling the entire thing for you. Go play it now.